Thank you. Ms. Van Duyne.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Tai, thank you for coming today. I continue to be concerned over what the trade agenda of this administration looks like. I mean, from my seat, I think most of this committee would say that there's not a trade agenda. What I do see is a laundry list of toothless proposals that do nothing and that have not had the approval of Congress. Ambassador Tai, I'm going to be very blunt. This administration's trade agenda does not exist. The administration is not holding China accountable. Trade enforcement's weak, and we've basically surrendered in areas such as digital trade. Earlier, you said you objected with my colleagues, saying you and your team are standing up to China, particularly at the WTO, but time and time again, actions speak louder than words, and I don't think you can truly defend these policies and honestly say that the USTR is actually pursuing an agenda that wins for America and disadvantages our adversaries. You defended IPEF and actions of the WTO as pushing back against China, but IPEF is a framework. It is not a true free trade deal. I mean, last time you testified, the buzzword was and ah, and this time it's been soon, which is equally as helpful and informative. So the question I've got is, does this administration actually plan to enter into a free trade agreement? And I would ask you to please be specific. Soon is not an answer.
Congresswoman, I disagree with almost everything that you've just said, and I think it's actually a tremendous sign of disrespect that you don't see the trade agenda that is so clearly before you.
Well,
we are not
your
negotiating.
Position,
I'm sorry, you asked me a question. And
as you know, we don't have any of these have real teeth.
Free trade agreements, as we've engaged with them in the past, have pitted Americans against Americans, and we are not doing that anymore.
I retake my time.
Yep, it's the lady's time.
So last year you had
She asked me questions that presumably she wanted me to answer. If she doesn't want me to answer them, I don't need to respond.
It's Mrs. Van Dyne's time.
Last year we had to do this backward to ensure that we actually supported our ally in Taiwan. Is the UTR in this administration intentionally avoiding Congress, and do you really care about the constitutional process? And a yes or no answer would just be great. Okay, non-responsive. We'll send it in a letter. Last summer, you stated that the Biden administration's trade policy is, I quote, turning the colonial mindset on its head. And last November, you opened an APEC meeting by acknowledging that it was being held on the, quote, unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone. I mean, I thought it was called San Francisco, but whatever. Then at a conference in Brussels earlier this year, you called for, quote, breaking out of some of these colonial and post-colonial structures. This entire time, the Biden administration has not lifted a finger to enforce China's violations of the Phase 1 agreement, but I guess you considered it more important to travel the world talking about unceded land in post-colonial structures than to hold China accountable for its unfair trade practices. I continue to hear from my constituents on concerns over the inability of our trade tools to address massive subsidies from China and other countries that dump products and unfairly enter the U.S. market. In your nomination hearing, you expressed the need for new tools to address these new threats to American industries. Last week, I sent you a letter laying out concerns on the aluminum extrusions. Given the serious concerns raised in the aluminum extrusions case, why are new trade tools not being utilized to initiate an investigation into whether Mexican aluminum extruders received unwrought aluminum for less than the market rate from governments of China and Russia?
Ms. Van Dyne, I'd be happy to respond in writing. I find your approach to this question session to be disrespectful and unserious.
Excellent. All right. I look forward to getting because we haven't really gotten responses at all during this hearing, which I find very frustrating as a member of Congress when we ask questions and the best that we can get is soon and hopeful and optimistic answers. In a recent interview, your former deputy USTR, Sarah Biaki, suggested that the reason the Biden administration did not pursue a Section 301 case against China's industrial subsidies was that the administration felt that it was no longer necessary after passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. Shocking to hear that. The Inflation Reduction Act does absolutely nothing to stop China's trade cheating. In fact, the IRA is helping China by maintaining our dependence on them for critical minerals. So given that, will you commit to launching an investigation into China's unfair subsidy practices? And again, please be specific. Soon is not an answer.
Ms. Van Dyne, I'm sure there are issues that we agree on. I don't know what you stand for, and I don't know who your constituents are.
So
but if I can understand better,
will you commit to launching an investigation
then I would be
into
happy
China's
to work with you.
unfair subsidy practices? So you can't answer whether or not you will actually do the job of investigating China's unfair subsidy practices?
No, I choose to engage respectfully with people who will treat me the same
So
way.
you can't
are
give me
not.
an answer on
No,
that?
I choose not to.
All right, thank you very much, and I yield back.